Hello and welcome to the Headless Giant Show. I got my friend Nick with me here tonight, and we are talking about crossing the abyss, death, the eclipse, and the philosophy behind it. So I'll start it off here. Nick, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell them where they can find you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, man. And I appreciate you having me on the show. In case you don't know who I am yet, Nick from the Occult Rejects, which Headless is a part of. And we are on BitChute, Rumble, YouTube, and all major podcasts. And we do have the occultresearchinstitute.org website.
There we go. Very nice. Thank you. So I wanted to start the show off with that song, O Fortuna, just as sort of like a background into what we're talking about. Now, the song itself comes from a Latin poem that was put to music in the 1930s. But basically, it's all about how fate is cruel and eventually takes its wrath out on everybody that experiences it. And there has to be something else, right? So the entire O Fortuna sort of poem is very, very nihilistic. And there has to be sort of a counterbalance to that sort of thing. And I think what Nick is going to be talking about, his experiences, sort of represents seeing the other side of fate, seeing the other side of the other side, seeing the other side of death, and understanding that there is something more from a far more tangible level than what most people think of in terms of the stories they're told about death, the stories they're told about life, and the stories they're told about the meaning behind all of it. So, how about you tell them a little bit about your experiences crossing the abyss?
Awesome, thank you. That was an awesome intro, and that was good, man. I like that. Yeah, there is, and I'm glad you're saying that, because just from my experience, there is so much more when you have that experience, like you realize, to even reality, I guess, or whatever this is that we're in. Just to preface first, when I was doing, for the most part, except for the first time, which I don't know if I actually technically was crossing the abyss, but any time after my first magical experience that I do believe I was crossing the abyss, I was only using meditation. I didn't do any ritual, and I was not smoking weed again yet. I had only started really because of COVID being crazy. I was like, I got to be stoned to deal with this shit. So I started smoking weed again. And these experiences happened before COVID. So I was, not sober, but like I really didn't drink and I wasn't doing any drugs. So, I can't even say that there was shrooms or DMT. There was no drugs involved. It was natural. I do just want to, put that out there, that drugs and actual ritual was not needed. It was only just really meditation.
Well, that's an important point you're making.
Yeah.
That's an important point, because a lot of people are drawn into the DMT world thinking that this is the easy key. This is the one that just turns every lock. And it just doesn't work that way. There are keys that you have to work for.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with that. And that's even like another thing too. Like, again, just from my experience, I'm sure it's different. Maybe if you're scrying, something might be going on, but like, just from my experience, my eyes are always closed when I have a magical experience. So if I'm like tripping out on drugs with my eyes open, I really just don't think I'm going to be having the same experiences, as the ones that I've had with, magic. Normally, and I guess to get into it, just to give people somewhat of an idea, before I start normally going into like a meditation, I will normally try to do like some energy movement. Like, I mean, that's a meditation in itself too, but like I'll sit down on a chair with a flat back and put my hands flat on my legs. It's called like the God pose. I got that out of Liber. I think it was Liber E, that shows like a bunch of different postures and stuff that was released, by Crowley. And it was the easiest pose. I was like, wow, that's considered meditating. You're just basically sitting there. And, or sometimes I would just lay down flat in my bed and I would do like energy work, where I would like kind of like picture light coming in and I would move it down through my body, down to my feet, and sometimes into the ground, and then vice versa. I would just do that and start to feel, for me, when I would do it long enough, I would almost feel like the warmth of the energy that I'm visioning moving in my body. Once I get that going, then sometimes I would start working on chakras and just trying to focus on them and feel them spinning and just go up and down on my body. Again, like I had a weird experience when I did ritual work that freaked me out enough to where I was like, I'm going to go back to basics and just meditate. And probably within a week later, I think it might have even been the first time I started at it again. I started doing this type of meditation, and it came back. It happened again, but much more intense. And the difference with this one that I feel that I wasn't so much on the last one was the fact of how much I was pressing or focusing on my pineal gland while this was happening. And like the thing is, it's like I would almost like look up cross-eyed and kind of focus on my pineal gland, and I would feel it like really strong. And it was almost as if I feel like I was putting pressure on it and like trying to push it. So like by the time I'm done, doing all this energy work, and I start kind of going into a meditation where it gets like really dark, which I'm sure you could probably understand what I'm getting at. Like when you first kind of close your eyes to go meditate, 15 minutes later into it, it's like a totally different darkness. And it's just like, what I'm saying? You're like, you're in the zone and you're meditating. It's not the same as when you just closed your eyes. So it was dark, and all of a sudden, like I'm pressing on my pineal gland harder because I can feel it. And like it all of a sudden looks like black is like, it was already black, but it looked like if like oil was coming out of the ground, and it was even blacker. Or if you had a black table and you looked down at it and it had like, you blew on it and there was dust that you didn't notice, and the dust moves away and you're like, damn, that's really black now behind it. It started looking like that, and it looked like almost like an oil slick around it, like very vibrant, like bright, thin colors coming out of it. And it was just kind of like around the edges, and the whole black would start to like fill up my whole vision. And then it was like really, really dark. And like, as crazy as it sounds, it almost even starts to feel like there's depth in there. As crazy as it sounds, it almost feels like I'm somewhere where there is space between me and something else. As crazy as that sounds.
Well, if I could hop in there.
Yeah.
A lot of the Eleusinian mysteries have to do, and these are some of the ancient Greek mysteries that have to do with going into the underworld and then coming back. You see that same idea. You're going into the underworld. You're going into a place that's blacker than black. You're going into a place, and that's the way it's described in all the Greek, is that these places that you go to through meditation and through other stimulations and things like that are a different type of idea than your average everyday, closing your eyes, opening your eyes. That whole thing starts to open up the idea that there is more than just this physical plane of existence.
Yeah. So, and like, even when I get to like the vision that I start to see now, it even feels like there's almost like some sort of distance too, or like you're in just some black place. And I mean, there's even somebody else on the show, they don't want to make it known, that they've had like kind of a lot of these experiences, or they just don't want to talk about it right now. But they were even telling me that like when they see that pin dot, and this is exactly like what made me realize this person isn't making it up, because I've never really talked about feeling the distance. They were even saying like, it even feels like it's like in your fucking head, but like somewhere out there, it's like so weird. And like, so, getting to that, I'd be pressing, it'd be really dark. And then all of a sudden it just looks like this tiny, like almost like swirling of like light. And then it turns into this pin dot, and it gets like really bright, like bright, like it's on like fire, but it's, it's white. And around it almost looks like kind of like half circular things. Like it almost looks like clouds, kind of like, the cloud outlines, but just the outline of it, not the rest of it. So like, it almost looks like there's even like something there, or 3D, kind of like you're looking through a viewfinder, in the way it would like make it look like it's 3D because of all these different slots and stuff. It starts to it looks a lot like that. And it starts to get closer. And then all of a sudden you start to see like black kind of like filling up the middle, to now it looks like an eclipse as it gets bigger. And then it just like kind of hovers. And then all of a sudden I'll start to see like, it looks like explosions around it, which is exactly why my logo is the way it is, with the eclipse and the roses, because at some point the explosions look red. And again, because of the way I said, with those curves and like those lines and stuff like around the eclipse, when you see the burst of color and you see that those like lines and stuff, it almost starts to look like a flower bursting open. So that's why I have like the roses around the eclipse. I'm gonna throw it out there. I think it's the same thing that the Grateful Dead's doing with their roses. That's just my opinion. Is the bursting of them around the eclipse before you have a magical experience. I still think even when it comes to
Well, it's not
Crowley.
just that though.
Go ahead.
You've also got the Rosicrucians, right? These people are close to the idea of this.
But it's like,
right?
For me to come out and start
and I
saying
think
that,
there's something else that's going on too.
I think
there's something else going on there too. If
go ahead.
Right. So if you look at a solar eclipse as it comes through the leaves of a tree, it creates sort of these pinhole cameras. I don't know if you've ever played around with a pinhole camera. So you'll actually see the eclipse coming through the tree branches like pinhole cameras on the ground. So you could see tiny little fractals of eclipses all over the ground as it's coming through the tree branches. And so what you're describing, seeing that coming out from the middle, coming out from that pin dot, sort of reminds me of the idea that it is kind of like that pinhole camera into the universe. And when you're opening that up, you can actually see farther outside of the thing. And that's why you sort of get that effect.
Yeah. I've even wondered, and, I'm not trying to, like, I guess, church this guy up, but, to me, it looks like sometimes like a burning star or something. And it's like, I see that experience every time I cross the abyss, and you have Crowley saying every man and woman is a star. So, I mean, it's like, I wonder if he's even talking about that. But what I did want to say too, like you mentioned Rosicrucians and other things, I even wonder with Crowley, every time he's talking about Rose, is it really that girl? Because supposedly he had that chick that even, was dictating the book of the law. You know what I'm saying? And her name was Rose. So, who knows? But so, yeah, I'll start having those explosions around it. And then this is a real interesting part. That will start to kind of like clear up. And then like almost like out of the four cardinal directions, you'll get like these fine line, very bright, burning looking colors coming out of it. And it curves. It doesn't make like an angle shape, but it curves and it starts to spin and like it spirals out. But honestly, I'm going to be totally honest with you. If you saw what I saw, you'd be like, that's a swastika. And it starts spinning and it's just like coming out at me. And I'm like, it's pretty wild. And then sometimes, not every time, but I'd say 80 or 90% of the time. And I don't know why. I don't know if maybe I just don't remember the experience. It doesn't happen. I don't know. But that will start turning into like geometric shape, like geometric designs and shapes, like spinning and just flashing like different types and spinning and just like it's coming at you. And then that stops and it gets like really dark. And then it starts to look like that there's like movie reels. There's a couple of ways I can explain it. You start seeing these like, they're like rectangle shape windows that start coming out of the eclipse and like come down the side, like kind of like that. And, like I said, it could even look like a movie reel in the cells. Or another way I've explained it is, like if I was at a train station or at the subway and I was on the middle platform and I had two trains coming down at me at the same time, looking at the windows, but if they're going really slow, that's the same thing where it'd be like those coming down, but they're always foggy, like cellophane look like, and it's always sepia color. There was the weird thing with me, like, because I make videos and stuff, I was like looking at the effects on like the program that I use, and I was like, what the fuck is sepia? And I threw it onto the image and I was like, I swear this was made to imitate what the fuck I've seen. Because like, that's exactly like, you remember when we did when we covered the Olympics, that sepia part, I was like, holy shit, that's exactly what it looks like to me. It kind of looks like that imagery. And in those windows, I've never jumped into one. I have the feeling that you can. I do believe that. Because I even had the idea of it while I was there watching it once. I don't know if it's past, present, or what, but it does look like different times and places possibly. There was one time, for the most part, except for this one time, I've really never been too interested in the windows. It's just, I'm kind of just like, all right, what's coming next? Or I know what's coming next now. So I'm like, all right, let's get this going. One time I was interested. in like one of the windows. And you know, when I'm having this experience, I'm not like looking, like I have no body. I'm just, you know, visualizing this whole thing. And it was like I kind of like floated up and then turned to the side and like looked into the window. And like I joke around, but like to me, like I don't know if I could have told, if I would have been able to tell the difference if it was like, you know, post nuclear war or if it was Arizona. But like I was just like, this just doesn't look entertaining to me for me to visit. So I'm not going to go in there. And like once I started thinking about that, it ended anyway. And, you know, going forward, anytime when I've ever had magical experiences, as soon as I start thinking about myself, it's over. Done. I think there's something with that. But so then that ended. But, you know, when I do let these things pass, eventually I will start to even feel physical feelings in my body. Because like this is pretty much like near the end before I blast off one more phase that I can remember. And like it will start to feel like almost like a fluttering within my body. And then like the bottom of my feet moving up just starts to feel like it's kind of like the energy's moving up, and like whatever, like if the energy's moved up to my knee, everything below that doesn't exist. Like it doesn't even feel like it's there. Like it just feels like I can feel the energy rising up and everything else just, you know, not existent. And it starts to rise up, and it does feel like it's almost kind of like all the energy starts like kind of building up in the rest of me. And all of a sudden, like at some point, it will like start to feel like almost like water. And the best way I can explain it is if I was like laying on the beach and the waves crashed and it was coming up on the sand, and the water would like go through, like instead of going around me, it was like if somehow my feet were like open, it would go through my body. Like it literally felt like I was feeling waves of like water running through my legs up. And then all of a sudden, like it will start to build up in my head. And then like right out the back of my head where they keep the yarmulke, it will feel like it's starting to slip out. And then at that point, it will start to feel like my whole body is like starting to flutter. And then as I slip out, it like feels like I explode into like 1,000 butterflies. And it's just like this whole like fluttering feeling of like, and then spreading out. And it feels like I get like pulled out in every direction. You know, and as that's happening, the visual that I'm seeing now, instead of those things, those movie reels, all of a sudden you start to see, and this is really weird, it looks a lot like Tote's headdress, actually. The black part in the middle of the white starts to rise up. And as soon as that starts to rise up, if you were to picture that, the bottom part would basically look like a huge crescent now with another sphere on top of it. And it starts to pull up and come off of the white sphere. And then all you do is just see this big white glowing thing. And now at this point too, I am holding that pineal gland. You know, didn't forget about that. I've been holding that the whole time through this whole vision. I've been focusing on my pineal gland too. Something feels like there's like a snap or a change. And when that black sphere comes off of it, it's like it fucking flies forward at you. And you literally feel like you just fucking blew your brains out. And that's when everything goes out the back of your head. And then you have that whole experience where I said, I feel like I start spreading out. And it's like at that moment, when I feel like I'm slipping out of the back of my head and I'm like deaf and I'm not even seeing this world anymore, all I do is like, it's almost as if like I'm melting, like that McCartney Union song, Weightless. Like it's all of a sudden like I become weightless and I feel like just shit just melted off of me. And in these moments after that, all I do is like feel this experience of love that I've never felt here. It's like 1,000,000 times stronger. And there is no thought of guilt, anger, shame, hate, fear. Like none of that exists anymore. Like I am completely in love with just the feeling of existing and being part of what I'm a part of. You know, and like it's just, you know, you see all these, it's just crazy. It's a lot of colors. I know this is gonna sound nuts. There's a lot of shit that I've seen NASA put out that I was like, I've fucking seen shit like that in a magical experience. That makes me really wonder what the fuck are they showing us? You know, and that's another thing I just want to throw that in there real quick. I'm sure this is, you know, isn't, you know, Headless knows this, but basically any idea from the one that we had here now and the one prior to that, any idea that we have about what's out there in space and the planets have been given to us from occultists. They've been alchemists.
Right.
So, I mean, like, how do we know what the fuck they're really talking about anyway? You know, and NASA is, come on. I mean, who the fuck believes NASA? You know, so
On that note, though, I think if we could go back to the swastika, like when we did the symbolic studies, solar symbolism, and they were bringing up the swastika, and they were talking about how that's very closely related to the polar symbolism, because the swastika is represented by the constellation of Ursa Major as it rotates around the North Star. So when you've got the different seasons coming in, and you're seeing the Ursa Major pointing towards that North Star, because if you can look in the constellation of Ursa Major, the part of the spoon that's pointing up is pointing to the North Star all the time. So you can always find the North Star if you can see the Big Dipper. The Big Dipper, right at the end of that, is going to be pointing towards the North Star, and all of that together as a constellation would be the swastika. And in my mind, what you're saying about that initial phase right there, that might be an indicator that several people from several different continents were having a similar experience, and the closest thing that they could come to representing that with is that symbol of the swastika. And it's been found on 5 different continents, all these disconnected peoples and all these disconnected ideas, but it's all coming back to that same symbol, which would indicate either they were taught or they learned on their own. And maybe that's why there's this continuity between all these different cultures, is that they were having experiences like this one, where they could actually see these images start to unfold on a much more experiential level than it was just told or passed down through these different oral histories.
I mean, I even think, you know, I've said this before. I think a lot of people who they have magical experiences, again, they may not be having my visions, but I do think my vision is something that is shared by people. And I think other visions might be shared by other people. This is why I think people, again, like you're saying, 5 different continents with this symbol. It's because they all had a magical experience and they were just drawing things that they saw. Now, if you share that experience before you cross the abyss, other people are going to know it, and you don't have to tell it to them. They saw it in their mind's eye. You know, and then when I think you have a magical experience, this is just my opinion, you connect to like the all consciousness, and that's how people get the same idea to start making the same things away from each other, is because they contacted the same source for an idea, and you just got the same idea. You know, so I do think you nailed it there. Yeah, and even like Mr. Obvious said in the chat,
and I think,
and this. Sorry, I just want to say this real quick too. He said, you know, the swastika is a peace emblem hijacked by our media movies of world wars. I just do want to bring up one thing too. I do agree that it's definitely used in a way that I think people won't understand what it really means. But I'm just saying, if you want to entertain the idea that magic actually does entail dying to an extent, if you want to start killing motherfuckers, why would you not use a symbol that you see before people die? It's a symbol of death. You know, if you want to pervert it, you know what I'm saying? Right. So, like, you know, I'm even saying, like,
on
they
that same note,
you know, it's associated with dying.
On that same note, what if you wanted people not to enjoy the experience of passing over and always be afraid of death as the ultimate ending, more so than by showing the symbol and creating it as the symbol of ultimate evil, right? Thou shalt not pass the swastika. You know, you always have to stay in this form so that you can never reach the other side. You know, and I think on some level, if they know what they're talking about and they are occultists and they do want to block people off from having a fuller experience, the whole idea of the swastika would be the #1 most hated symbol in the world.
Think of, imagine that. And imagine it's actually part of your visions before you cross over, and you're already pre-programmed to hate that symbol. It's like a mind fuck.
And the crazy part is, both could simultaneously be true about that same symbol, because of the finality of death, and because crossing it over could be, you know, some sort of freedom. they could both be true at the same time.
That is what I think, honestly, is one of the more impressive things. Well, not that any of the shit he did was impressive, but in occult wise, Hitler, he took a symbol that is something that is seen before you have the most beautiful experience, like you're saying, and ended up having millions of people thinking the complete fucking opposite. That is a motherfucking magus right there. Just controlled how many fucking people's minds on his symbol and have them confused about what magic is. That is fucking insane.
Right.
You know, and the thing is, what I'm getting at is
but
now
the universality of it.
You can never use that symbol if you want to try to even explain what I'm saying, because people think you're crazy. That's what I'm getting at. He basically copyrighted the use of that symbol. That is nuts. I could never use that if I wanted to try
and the universality. The universality of that symbol when it comes to death makes it powerful in the minds of everybody that sees it. Because if there is such a thing as reincarnation, we've seen it before, and we've seen that symbol in a very, very powerful way. And coming back, seeing it again would have an even more powerful experience, because some part of our subconscious mind, being connected to whatever that life was before, has seen it before and knows something big is coming. That's the symbol for something big.
Mm.
You know, I mean, that's really what magic comes down to on their level. You know, how to control symbols, how to control the mind.
What's crazy, do you know what's even wilder too, is that, like, if I remember correctly, where they have like that whole black sun thing that Himmler had, I think like around it in one of the rooms, it even has like all these flames, these pillars, you know, for all these other people. And I'm like, if you think about that as the eclipse, and I'm talking about all the explosions around it, I'm like, is that are they just recreating that image again? I was just like, fuck, man.
Right.
I don't know. It's weird.
Right. Well, that was a castle used for ritual. So the idea that it would be disconnected from the experience of passing over death seems ridiculous to me. Obviously, what they're trying to do, I mean, everybody knows that the Nazis were trying to collect knowledge from around the world.
Yes.
And having that symbol being from around the world, from all these different places, and using it as that, you know, this is the icon. That's what it gets used for in the symbolism. So it's like it's the ultimate occult symbol because of the fact that everybody has to experience it. You know, everybody crosses over that line. And at some level, having that as your symbol will be one of the more powerful symbols in the entire world, you know? I mean, think about which has more power, the swastika or the dollar sign. Are they in a, you know, mortal battle against each other? You know, there's something to this idea that these symbols and this information takes on a life of its own.
You know, it's funny. I even think that that's dollar sign,
especially when it
the eyeball, believe it or not. So I think that is, I'd say, even another like way of like fucking off a symbol. You know.
Right. Well, I mean, that sort of goes into it. Is your concept of the eyeball as being sort of this microcosm of the macrocosmic universe?
Yeah.
Really has a basis in how everything experiences the universe that we can relate to. Like, I think it might be really hard to relate to a cave dwelling creature that doesn't have the use of its eyes, but at the same time, it still has the vestigial eye there. So it's almost like the eye is connected to the ideas of life and death.
Oh shit! Yeah. Well, if you didn't have them, oh well, yeah. I mean, it was. How would you know about anything dying? I guess if you didn't have eyes to see, right? I don't know. I mean, that's pretty deep. Huh.
Even in our pineal gland, like our pineal gland is part of the vital functions of some lizards. Some lizards have the pineal gland exposed, you know, because they've got a different form of how they process light and energy. And so now for us, it would seem to be vestigial, but it's not. And for the cave dwelling animals that used to have functioning eyeballs, it seems vestigial, but how much more of our lives are we missing out on because we think it's vestigial? It's something that used to be, useful at some point, and then we've lost connection with it. Think about the appendix, right? The appendix used to be more useful in our experience, and now it's sort of fallen out of use because we've digested things differently. Cats, for instance, they have vestigial organs. Rabbits used to eat meat, and now they don't. There's a lot of vestigial things that we don't have connection to anymore, and I think language is becoming that with the way we spread the internet.
Yeah. Oh boy, it's coughing. Big hit. Yo,
Yeah,
real quick.
when I think about things like, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to, like, real quick. There was a couple of questions in chat. I just wanted to read and get them out there because I didn't want to. Felt bad. Oh man. I lost it. Oh, Nick, how have these experiences changed you in your consciousness? How have these experiences enhanced your ability through wisdom to love? Well, I don't know. I mean, it's unfortunately. I mean, I don't know if this is answering your question, but like unfortunately, that experience with the abyss is much more intense than anything I felt in like reality. So that is kind of a sucky situation, or kind of make it almost addictive. Ability through wisdom to love. I mean, it's definitely, I've said before, when it comes to magic, it's like going from a cucumber to a pickle. It's going to change. Well, it changed me a lot, drastically. I'm really not exactly sure to answer this question, but I can definitely tell you when it's come to the idea of love and the experience, and just then factoring in humans that haven't had my experience, it's just it definitely has changed my life. Have these experiences enhanced your intuition, and in what ways? I would think that has me a little bit more aware of my surroundings. I will say, in some ways, I know this may sound crazy, and I think this is why magicians are people who fuck with magic. If you want to be a piece of shit, you can get somewhere. It has definitely helped giving me the ability to read people a lot better if I want to. I could probably like spend 10 minutes with somebody, and if I ask the right questions, because now I know like what I'm looking for, because I've done my own work on myself, I could probably like, get an idea of exactly how I need to be and act to probably get whatever I want from this person, if I wanted to be that way. What else? Enhance your intuition, and in what ways? I don't know. I'm kind of stuck on that one. I'm going to go on to the next one. Sorry. Has your intuition or even psychic abilities ramped up after having such intense experiences? I can say, and this probably isn't like really an answer to that, but I can say fucking with magic after my first few experiences is a lot easier for me. Like, I can close my eyes, and if I wanted to, like tonight, I could probably lay down and cross the abyss if I wanted to, or at least when it comes to December, I could just fucking, that's easy. I don't even have to put much thought into it, really. And which I do find interesting. That's something to do with the month of December. Ever since I've had magical experiences, it's the easiest time to do it.
It goes back to the sun.
Probably, yeah. Has these experiences brought you into a deeper understanding and love with the people in your life, and in what ways? Deeper understanding and love. Well, it's definitely changed. For me, and I guess I'll keep it 100, that like, even doing shadow work on myself, I had to start looking at like why I'm the way I am, and why I'm programmed to believe and act the way I do. And most of that will probably go back to, unfortunately, parents, family, neighbors, school teachers, people that I looked up to as a child. And when I go to look at these values that I picked up from them, and go and actually think about how much I want to adhere to that now, since I have the chance to not, because I'm not under anybody's thumb, I may not agree with them. And then you might almost start to get a little resentful. So I think in some ways it's helped me have like a little bit of compassion for some people, and my family, and close to me. It's, I have to kind of, this may sound screwed up, but maybe love people differently since my experience, or just be more understanding of people who are ignorant, because it's like at times, I guess for me, I guess this is maybe the best way I could put it. You have a magical experience, and it's like, yeah, you kind of get woken up to, like, in my opinion, what the fuck's really going on. And to watch people like just like blindly accept slavery and give them every fucking excuse they can in the book to accept it is very upsetting. So sometimes it's very hard to even deal with that. I have to understand that people haven't had these experiences, and they'll never understand where I'm coming from. And, they might even get resentful at things that you say when you try to explain it. But, yeah, that's a sucky situation, because it's just like I have an experience that people that I can't share with, and they don't know where I'm coming from. That's very frustrating, because I do think that if they had the same experiences I had, they'd be saying the same thing. Fuck this, and it's it's just rough to watch happen in front of you. But it is what it is, that would be one thing.
A lot of this has to do with that aperture.
Go ahead. Sorry.
The aperture part of the experience. As soon as you think of yourself, it shuts off. So if we go back to the pinhole camera analogy, as soon as you think of yourself, you're creating that blockage between yourself and what's happening all the time anyway, right? So this experience that you're having, that's not unusual. What you're experiencing right now, this is the unusual part, right? But being connected to that source, and being connected to love, and being connected to that feeling, that's all the time, everywhere. But when we close down that aperture and refuse to be part of the whole, then we're shut off from that experience. And you see a lot of verses in the Bible about that. It's like you can be in love all the time, but as soon as you lower that aperture, but that goes back to intention, and intention doesn't go away just because a magical experience is very intense. The intention matters almost more at that point, because as soon as that intention changes, the aperture changes, and then you've changed your view of the whole situation.
Yeah, I told you. Yeah. As soon as you think of the self, screwed up. But another thing I was trying to get at too, like not even, I guess, people saying change your, I guess, kind of like the way my life. Again, just going back to that experience, it can be very sucky. It sucks that, like, I mean, again, I'm not trying to make myself sound special, but like, I'm sure a very small percentage of people actually experience it, and it's kind of hard, like when you have no one else to talk about it with, or nobody gets it. What I'm saying? It's very frustrating to just always be telling a story that you have to, like, hope that people have faith in what you're saying to even believe you. And the problem is they're never going to actually know what you're talking about because they haven't experienced it. It's like I could be ranting and raving and telling Headless how great Pink Sabbath is, and because he's never had it, but he's not going to know if he likes it or not until he tries it, until he experiences it. You know what I'm saying? So he'll never, what I'm saying? So it's just, it gets to be very, very frustrating for sure. But it is what it is.
It's like viewing the eclipse through the trees.
Yeah.
When you're viewing the eclipse through the tree, you see that very small eclipse on the ground through the pinhole, but unless you look up, you're never going to see it yourself. So you've got to sort of say, look down, look at what this is, this thing in form, and then understand what formlessness is like. Formlessness is sort of the experience of being part of everything all at the same time, because you can't really have form and be separate. And there's a lot of philosophers, Parmenides, for example, he talks about how form and formlessness create the first division of the universe. And, he was talking about it in terms of the ancient Greek gods. Is like that first separation is where we start to come into form. And so this entire time, as we're moving down these cycles of emanation, we're coming more and more into form. But essentially, the form itself is a lie, and the whole is what the real thing is. But since we can't see the holes because we've got that aperture, we can't really connect to it as well. But it's almost like the experience of death reconnects us to the experience of formlessness, reconnects us to the idea of being everywhere all at once.
Mm. You know what I do find interesting too is that, I had my co-host Lisa pointed this out, and I didn't even realize it. Again, I was saying that whenever I'd have this experience, like it looks like that, that white sphere blasts and just like an explosion of light. That's exactly what happens when you get born into this world too, an explosion of light. It's like almost like you're going back the way you came in.
Exactly.
It's very weird.
Right. And this perception, I think, is really key, because once people can start to understand that their perception is shaping reality, they can understand that their perception can change based off of will. And, once you start to plug in these pieces, then you can start to see people start to reemerge as that force of will in the right direction. But unless they're capable of understanding that there is a wider world out there beyond this form, how do they get to that point? They got to be led around by the nose. They got to be, cajoled. But really what it comes down to is an acceptance that there is something bigger. And a lot of people have used that to their advantage, even though they probably didn't deserve it. They make them see that there is something wider than themselves, and then they close the walls off as they do so. It's like there's something wider, and then guess what? We're stopping it here. Don't ask any more questions. But that's sort of like the whole cycle of civilization. You get to a certain point, and then if you ask any more questions, we have to stop that. And then those questions start building in on themselves, and then society becomes this, little insular bubble again. We're back to calling everybody conspiracy theorists or a heretic or whatever, because all those hanging questions never get answered by the people we're asking them about these things. Like the church doesn't seem to have the answer, and if you ask too many questions, you're a heretic.
Yeah.
The state, they don't want to answer these questions.
There's too many questions.
And they all just build up.
Yeah, that is funny. You become a heretic.
Right.
That's a great way to put it, right? That is funny. Oh, you must not believe. No, I just don't understand it yet. That's all. I'm trying to figure it out. It's funny.
Right. I think that's why personal experience is so important when it comes to this stuff. And unless we have the traditions that sort of reinforce the idea that you can understand what these things are saying without somebody else's instruction, then how do we get there? And so we end up substituting instruction for experience. And I think that's why the cycles of history happen, is because we've substituted the instructions with the experience.
That is something I do want to add to it. Because there is plenty of stuff to learn, and that is valuable. But unfortunately, I think when it comes to occultism, to really start getting into some deep stuff, you have to start having these experiences. And that's just my opinion. And the thing is that, you have people, 99% of the people are probably controlling, or have not controlling, but like have put forth, what everything means, or this is this and that is that, have never had that experience. And like most people will just never think any farther than what people are telling them that have never had an experience. It kind of like fucks up the whole information, in my opinion, to an extent.
What I like to go back to is the idea that we lose so many words with every successive generation, right? We may try to create substitutes, but we're never actually getting the experience of those people because we don't have their words. So we have to start doing all the cross referencing to understand where they're coming from and understand what their experiences are so that we can maintain those traditions. But every generation, we're sort of losing, tens of thousands of words that were used in common parlance with all these different pockets of society that would reflect the experiences of those people, especially when it comes to life and death. I mean, how central was the focus of understanding life and death to early humans? Like that was their first original focus is what does this place mean? What are we doing here? And then they would take those visions and these symbols and try to show other people how to reach the same point that they did in their understanding. And now we kind of lose that. The instructions are vague and unclear because we don't understand the same words that they understood.
Yes,
So this meaning, I think, is a side function of the experience, and so we're constantly trying to create meaning, and in the process we're destroying meaning. And it's that constant balance between the two that sort of makes up our understanding of time, because time is a process of destroying the meaning that came before it and understanding something different. But there are very definite ties between the two that maybe we don't see right away. We don't understand immediately. That's why I think things like numerology are important, is because these ideas of numbers have linked concepts of meaning over time. And once we start to get into that, then we can understand the concepts of meaning and maybe a little bit of the potential energy that comes along with it.
Yeah. I think numbers can be, like you're saying, can be very important. It's nice to hear other people saying that, especially, used with a combination of other things. I think it definitely show you something that's going on. Especially like I think me and you even talked about it recently. Like you'll have like something that will, whatever, a certain word also will like equate the same value of all this other stuff that has been attached with that person too in the last few years. And it's just like, are you just trying to kick around the same energetic value for a while? It's just really weird when you see stuff like that. It's almost like, or is this like a code to like your server?
Well, that's the thing. It could go unexamined. I think the most powerful spells are the ones that go completely unexamined. How do we know that there aren't words that have been programmed out of our language that we're not supposed to think or say or use? And in essence, by programming those words out of our conception, we're capable of being controlled. I mean, they talk about that in 1984 and several other dystopian books. Is once you can start programming the language, you can start programming the people. And like you were saying, those people who are, telling us how we should view the world, how we should view these things, they don't have this magical experience. They don't know what they're talking about when it comes to life and death. And yet they're the ones setting the boundaries.
Yeah.
So in some level,
yeah. Yeah, it's just like
at some level it makes sense,
Not trying to be a dick, but it's like I've even joked around, but like it's no lie. It's like you get some people that just watched a few Jordan Maxwell and fucking David Icke episodes, and all of a sudden they're a prophet of occultism, and it's just like, yo, I don't even think you've ever done a ritual, have you? Like, you never even stepped in the ring. Like, how does this happen? I don't know. Very weird.
They'd have to know where the ring is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people are so programmed by like materialism that they don't realize that the arena is inside. As you're trying to talk to other people, that's an arena outside that has nothing to do with the arena inside that you're trying to really get to if you're concerned about the nature of this place, and this is the divide between East and West. The Western concept is we have to go into all the world and preach the gospel. That's the way it's been for 2,000 years. But the Eastern concept is like, you're not going to find anything out there that's not going to be inside of yourself to begin with, macrocosm, microcosm, but it's the same idea when it comes to understanding these things. And, you know, you can look at the conquest of history and see that there's this pattern repeating over and over and over again. All these numbers, all these people, all these places, but you don't really have the context to understand it fully unless you go deep within yourself.
Yes. And that's what I think is very important. Is that you actually, in my opinion, too, when it comes to like fucking with magic, if you haven't done some deep, I mean, my opinion, I don't know if it'll even happen if you haven't done some deep like inventory on yourself, but I would advise to make sure you have for when you come back, because, you know, that's another thing too that I didn't really, you know, I'll cover real quick. You know, after I've had these experiences, this might actually be the most insane part and actually the hardest to deal with, is that you, from my experience, as crazy as it sounds, you will start getting like downloads. Things will come to you that you'll understand that you've never understood before. You'll have like visions. You'll have like visions that will almost like line up, and like it's like almost like connecting thoughts and ideas and like showing you like, yeah, this means that. It's so bizarre, and it's like almost like it's so loud you could almost like say you're hearing a voice in your head, but you're not, which is really bizarre. But like you'll you know, it's not like, it's very much like the Matrix, but not, you're not going to wake up and be like, oh, I know kung fu, but you're going to come out of it knowing and understanding stuff that you didn't before. And sometimes that may not be like the best thing, depending on where you are mentally, because even in my experience, there were certain things with, you know, experiences with magic that I was just like very hard for me to even kind of accept, you know, because like after that experience, like you had to, like, I didn't have faith in, I knew now, which is a big difference in my opinion too. Um, that, you know, knowing and faith, completely different. You know, knowing is you've had an experience now, you've tried the pink salmon and you know if you like it or not. Uh, you know, after you have these experiences, I know I've been lied to, and like certain things that I've believed my whole life cannot make sense if this just happened. And you have to like start realizing that certain values that you've adhered to just crumble. And it's just like, oof, like, then what the fuck is this reality or this world? You know, it can get pretty deep if you start like really kind of, you know, looking at what you just experienced. You know, or you might be shown certain things that will give you certain understandings that might go against something that you used to hold to yourself very strongly. And you're like, fuck, I have to let that go. That can, you know, it's a little bit harder than it sounds when it's like something very deep in a magical experience. It's just, you know, it can shock you, and it can, you might have to make sure you're pretty okay in the head to deal with that when you come back. So I do want to
Right,
toss that.
right. And I think a lot of that has to do with what the fates are, you know, where we found ourselves. Not everybody's in the same position, and there's so much differentiation between people that once you view sort of the other side and come back, you can understand that maybe we're not even the same species. Like we could be looking across to each other and have absolutely nothing that connects us together. But, you know, from the materialist standpoint, it's like, well, you know, according to biology, you guys have so much in common. It's like, well, actually, you know, we're on some completely different, you know, understanding of how the universe works and how everything works. And being across from somebody like that, I'm not saying that they would be lesser or greater, but it's like there's almost a separation and a divide from the point of view of, well, maybe, you know, he can do his thing, I can do my thing, and there shouldn't be this bridge between us because, you know, we are that separate. And if you look, a lot of times when they talk about reincarnation and all the rest of this stuff, they talk about how some souls will migrate together, right? It's this idea that, well, it's sort of like a cluster of people that are supposed to be in your life. And when you understand that there are those people, you're always looking for them, whether you like them or not. Maybe there's something you should be learning from this. But at the same time, it's like once you start to view these things energetically, the physical reality of the situation plays a secondary role to the spiritual reality of the situation.
Yeah. one thing, I'm sorry, I do want to just say this real quick, and this blew my mind in the chat. When I say that phrase, step in the ring, it's just weird because like normally I say weird shit on here, and I don't think people, I'm just going to be totally honest with you, people, I don't think have a fucking any clue what I'm saying. You know, I do that. I even throw up fucking hand signs on the show, and I don't even think people catch it. You know, nobody asks me about it. And it's weird how, like, you know, sometimes when I say something, there's multiple layers to it. And when I said before, stepped in the ring, I actually meant a ritual circle, or I meant had a magical experience with the eclipse. And I've never told anybody what I mean by that. Lisa, I don't know if she's saying inside the ring is inside the eclipse, but I don't know where she got that from. But I was like, holy fuck. Like, or is she taking a guess about what I just meant? So that took me off guard and fucked me up because I was like, wow, somebody actually just realized what I was saying. And I was like, I don't know if that was her thought or if that's actually like something out there that I didn't know about. So that took me off guard. Sorry. I just wanted to put that out there.
I think that's important when it comes to centering, right? So centering, what you're talking about could be like the ultimate form of centering oneself in such a way that there is no outside world, you know? Being that centered would be inside of a magical circle to such a degree that nothing else exists outside of it, while at the same time, you know, you are connected to everything at the same time.
You know, that's so interesting because the Tifereth like that a lot. The solar sigil, if you think about it, it's just a circle with a dot in the middle. You know, and like the idea, like, you know, if you wanted to work with the solar energy, you could be even being like, I want to be king of my own domain. And that's like very much what you're describing right there. You kind of have like this thing around you, and this is you. Yeah, I see what you're saying, even with the solar sigil, in a sense, and ways that it can be used in magic. Sorry, I know it was like a tangent, but
right. And no, I mean, these are concepts in magic that are sort of discussed and thrown out there, but they're not really. I mean, how many Magic 101 books do we need? You know, how many have you seen? It's like it's all 101. Where's the 102? Where's the 1002? It's all 101 level. So you have to really ask yourself, are you getting even the Magic 101 stuff if that's all there is? You know, they don't really go beyond that. Where's the advanced courses? What are we talking about here? You know, if this is a thing, where is it? And I think that's what I like about having you on the show is like you're showing everybody the 102 level and saying this is just the start. You know?
Yo, like I've even
there's
said
so
before,
much more that can be done.
Yeah, even my experience. I mean, there's, you know, I'm like a novice at this shit. There's people who have way more experience doing this stuff, understand what they saw more, you know, I'm sure jumped in these windows and know what the fuck goes on with that shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it's way even more advanced than I'm even talking about my experiences to be had when it comes to magic, in my opinion. That's what I'm thinking. So
but I think that's why, you know, death is so important to be talked about. You know, because that death is only the beginning. You know, I mean, you see that tag phrase in 100 movies, but it's like, why don't we apply that to ourselves? Death is only the beginning here, people. And if all you're focused on is that the death is the ending, we're in for some shit. We're in for the same cycles to be repeated over and over and over again, unless we start to view things slightly differently when it comes to those aspects.
Oh, yeah. Even like, you know, there's been people. There was even Jesuit priests that I've even gone on saying that when it comes to occultism, you know, and this understanding that people being stuck on the death aspect and not the rebirth when it comes to Saturn and stuff is a huge problem, because then you're not understanding what happens after it. It's not a bad thing, or it doesn't have to be, you know, put it that way. You know, and it just, I do think,
but I think
just
that fear of
the fear of death is
I think that fear of No, I think we agree that fear of death needs to be overcome, and it needs to be rooted out in such a way that people can no longer sort of see that death as being the ending. And unfortunately, that's sort of like a cause of all the misery out here, is because people are so afraid of death. They end up living their lives in such a way that it puts other people in a position where self-defense is the only option. You build a wall around yourself, you're going to end up creating the strife and the difficulties that you built the wall to avoid in the first place. So I mean, it's all this self-fulfilling prophecy kind of cyclical bullshit. The more we get into the ideas here, the more we can connect to the waves and the functions that's really happening below the surface.
I agree
That's
with.
that's the way I would describe it.
Yeah, I think just I don't know what it is again, and I'm not trying to throw darts at anybody personally, but it's just somehow I don't know what happened, but it just seems like literally in both communities too. I hate to say it, it's even worse in the conspiracy community, which I was kind of upset about. But even in the occult community and the conspiracy community, it's just certain. It's just very it's not too deep. I mean, people, I don't know. It's very scratched the surface stuff that is considered to be the answer for everything. And it's just way deeper than that. And for some reason, we are stuck on I don't know, just we're not going any, I feel we're stagnant with understanding the occult, and fear is like the huge reason why, I think. Or everybody just automatically has deemed everything bad. So nothing will get looked at or being investigated. And, I mean, I even think, and I'm not condoning it, and I'm not saying that, it needs to be done that way. But even in the past with other occultists, I do think, like horror and sexualized shit is a way for them to just get people to not read the stuff. I'll pepper it with that, and that will stop people from reading it, or they'll think it automatically is bad. And then again, the only person who's going to ever get it is going to be the person who's just willing to keep searching regardless, something like that. Or it gets ciphered.
Well, I see the term elitism.
Yeah.
I see the term elitism as being another one of those things. It's like, no, you want to be the elite. And you want to be able to say that you're the elite because you've experienced something that not everybody else has. You've taken yourself to that point past the surface level. And so the idea of we need to level everything and that there can't be any elites, that's wrong-headed. What we need to be doing is we need to find the elites that really have experienced something, that really can show their ability and raise them up, because that raises everybody else along with them. Unfortunately, we've used this term so long, it really has no meaning. Can anybody really tell me what makes a guy like Bill Gates elite? I mean, his brain's not functional because we can see through his lies. His money is less than functional because his investment portfolio is all land. That's a person with no imagination. And then his products aren't great either, but we lack so much of the ability to raise other elites that now he becomes this symbol of everything we should hate, when he's just kind of an incompetent fat doofus. How is that elite? Like, where is the elitism there? I don't see anything other than his attitude. And the elitist attitude has done nothing for humanity other than bring us all down. So let's try and figure out what this idea of elite is, so that we can move forward into something that actually works, that we can show the evidence of it working. This is a big problem too when it comes to alternative energy. The alternative energy community, they want to promote the idea of free energy, while at the same time getting so hung up in the internal politics that now everybody's accused of everything. It's like, no, let's look at the elite level knowledge. Let's look at the elite level practice. Let's look at that instead of worrying about where this money is coming from or what these people are doing. Let's look at the knowledge. Let's dig into it. That's what I want to move towards. Is digging into the knowledge is where we're going to find the answers we're looking for. Being stuck on the surface level shit, I mean, we're a million gatekeepers gatekeeping gatekeepers. Let's just get into the knowledge, people,
You know what's crazy too is that, like, I'm going to be totally honest with you. Like, if you were to, like, kind of just, like, be stuck with, like, the last 20 years of, like, I guess whatever knowledge we've been given, whether it's, in the regular world or the conspiracy community or whatever, like, if you took that and then went back, which is really fucked up somehow, I don't know how this makes sense, but now you go back to the 1600s and go find a book in the library that nobody even knows who this motherfucker was and read their shit, and you're going to be like, what the fuck is all this? Like, why is this more detailed and more honest than something that is accepted as truth now? How the fuck did we get from here to this? Where did we get retarded in the middle of this?
Right.
What happened? And it's just like,
it's the language. It's the language.
For some reason, people buy that more, I think, too. Sad.
Well, marketing is a great tool for shysters and selling, this really surface level stuff. I mean, I think we're starting to see a researching community come together and say, look, here are the basic facts. You cannot ignore these facts. You can't just say, I'm going to devote my life to this cause because you like the marketing anymore. Here are the facts. And we're starting to see those researchers really start to shine. But those are the people we need to protect. We can't be worried about the talk show hosts. I mean, let's be honest, being a talk show host and having guests on and doing that, that's great to expose the people. But really what we need is the knowledge. We need that knowledge to flow through.
And again, I'm not, whatever, not saying our show's any better than anybody else's, but that is a thing I really don't understand in this community. When it comes in the conspiracy community, just what's the point of like two dudes just having guests on all the time? And then, I don't know. It's just like, I don't know, it's just very weird. It's like, why don't you like
entertainment?
Cover something. Why don't you present a topic? It's right. It's just so weird to me, especially if they're monetized. Then I even find that weirder. It's like, yo, you're just a pimp at this point, because I'm sure you're not paying the guest, and they're the one who's doing all the work. It's just weird to me. It's just, I don't know. I just don't understand that to an extent, because then it's just like you just basically have like 50 shows out there that are just revolving the same guests over and over again, and it's just like, where are we going with this? Besides a fucking, it's like like I'm washing my clothes or drying my clothes. Washing machine, fucking spin cycle.
Merry-go-round marketing.
Yeah,
well, that's the thing too. If you look at the current social media environment, basically you have to do the same thing 3 million times in a row, get it tight, and then you can actually start to monetize it. So you'll see the same videos from these accounts over and over and over again, because it might reach somebody in that target demographic. But what have you actually done, other than the same thing 50 million times in a row?
Oh, it's so hard right now.
It leaks over.
I wish that's all I had to do to present a topic was something to the effect of writing an email to ask for a guest to come on. I write more than that in like a description of like on my fucking Google Drive notes before I even start 14 pages for it. It's like, I don't know. Yeah.
I think maybe we're lacking the type of openness, because there is a lot of distrust, for people to actually, show that their knowledge can be useful, because that has to be paywalled, but really, this is something that I noticed about the Middle Ages too, is that you'll have these big doctors like Galen in the, early ADs, right? And then Galen's work on the humors, right? He talks about the black humor, the yellow humor, saliva, and blood as being the 4 humors. And that was used up until the 1800s, because nobody was building off of it, And so in the 1800s, then we've got this, microscopic revolution. But at the same time, it's like we could have had that way back in the day if people had just tried to build off of this stuff instead of taking it as orthodoxy. But there's
Yeah.
this disconnect between orthodoxy and authority. And, you know, you have to be in this line of thinking. You've got to build off of this stuff. So when you hear something, start writing it down and start to build from that thing, because the power of association is so strong and so powerful in this realm that we live on, that we can start to build this stuff just by making simple notes. Somebody else will take that and they'll run with that too, because they've got their own unique knowledge. And so, you know, having that interplay between different people and their research topics and expanding on it, that's just the first step. And we can really hit that. The power of association comes through things like numerology. You know, it's not necessarily because it's the best at doing it, but it's a way, you know. I think my internet went out.
Oh, no,
Are you still there, Nick?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I am, sir. Oh, maybe on your end it looks bad, but you're still good on my end. Oh boy, here we go. All right, we got the spinning window. There he is.
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, there we go. Yes. All right. Well, what do you think? I think this was a good episode. We got into all of it, and
yeah, no, I think we covered a lot.
Usually when my internet starts to go out,
yeah, you were glitching a little bit.
It starts to really go out. So, yeah,
all right,
I think this was a great episode. I think it's given people the tools that they would need to, you know, start to make those associations. Listen to the symbols, grow the symbols, make it apply to your own life, and you'll find that you've got the knowledge, you've got the depth, but you've got to bring it out to the surface, you know. And I think that's where we're going. Be brave in how you present it.
Yes. One thing I just want to leave people with too, you know,
we can't just keep it to ourselves anymore.
Sorry. I think there's a delay.
Yeah, usually when it goes out, it really starts to go out. So let's see. Once Nick comes back, I think we'll close it up.
Yes. Real quick, I just want to say this too. You know, I talked about it in the show slightly. Me and Headless have talked about it. I do want people to understand that I do highly suggest to please look into.
Nick, are you there?
Yes, I am, sir. Yes, I am. We glitching. Yeah, let me message you in the private chat.
Hello.
Yes. Can you hear me, sir? All right, yeah. Look into the eyeballs, please. Check out all the parts of the eyeballs and look how it works. And look into NDEs. That is another one. I highly suggest people to look into NDEs. You know, for people to get maybe a little bit more of an idea of what I was saying with the experience of death. I think that'll be a little bit easier to get an understanding of what I was saying. And again, I just want to reiterate, please, I'm begging people, start looking into the eyeball. Start looking into specific parts like the optic nerve, the vitreous humor, vitreous nerves, the lens. The zonules of Zin, I think, is extremely important. I do actually believe, I'm going to make this claim, I think the zonules of Zin is just sewed on the tree of life. I think that is the machinery that changes the eyeball, you know, gets everything going. So I just highly suggest to look into the eyeball and look into NDEs. And thank you very much, Headless.
Thank you. I think this is a great episode. A lot of people are going to connect with this type of information, and we will keep going. You know, we'll keep going and figure out on our end what the associations we can make. You figure it out on your end and bring those associations. Like, we're seeing all sorts of great stuff from the chat. That's what's up. I mean, that's keeping us moving in the right direction, and having the ideas is what spurs us forward. I mean, I know I'm not really motivated too much by materialism. I am by ideas. So I think this is a great episode.
Hell yeah. You know, that's just another thing I want to throw in there. You know, that's why you're on the Occult Rejects, because we're all able to come together and just throw in our ideas. You know, that's another thing I do just want to, you know, I guess shamelessly plug the Occult Rejects. You know, you probably got about a solid 8 to 10 people that make up that podcast now. And I'll have 4 or 5 people on at a time, and there isn't any arguing. And a lot of people look at things very differently. We're basically just all tossing our ideas into a pot and seeing what we get when we mix it all up. So, you know, yeah, very well said, Headless. And I appreciate you letting me come on, and I appreciate, you know, you coming on the Occult Rejects and being a part of it.
Absolutely. Thank you. I think this is a great episode. Join us next time. We're going to have great, more guests. We're going to get into all sorts of different topics. And if you want to be a guest, please get in contact with me on Twitter or here on YouTube. Just shoot me a comment, shoot me an email. You can find me at headlessgiantpodcast@gmail.com. Throw anything you want to at me. I've been getting a lot of people on Instagram that have been messaging me too. So if you want to find me, look up Instagram and look up Twitter. I'm ready to go. So let's do this, you know?
Awesome, dude. All right.